Welcome back to Confessions of a Recruiter with Blake and Declan. We are on a global mission to build the world's largest community of recruiters so we can all connect and succeed together.
That's right. If you want to check out more of Confessions of a Recruiter, jump onto confessions.tv, subscribe to our bi-weekly newsletter, access merch, and if you want to chat to us directly, join our Discord at XR House with the links below. Now, we hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome back to another episode of Confessions of a Recruiter. We're joined by a very special guest. Declan and I have decided that this is the most stylish recruiter in the industry. Welcome, Jess.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
No worries. So, Jess, before we get started, we're going to go through some promo stuff. So we've got a sponsor of the podcast. Have you ever had CBD oil?
Never had CBD oil.
Neither have I. Should we try it?
What is
No.
it?
So we've got a guest. We've got a sponsor. Before You Speak Coffee, really good coffee. So they're sponsoring the podcast. Any recruiters out there want to get a cup of confessions, use hashtag.
Don't hashtag, just use
Ex-recruiter.
ex-recruiter at the checkout.
Ex-recruiter at the checkout and you get 10% off.
Yep. And then advanced extracts, they do CBD 1000, you get 20% off.
20%?
Yeah,
Geez, they're generous.
they are. Big margins in CBD
Big
oil.
margins in CBD oil. Awesome. So, Jess, thank you so much for coming on. We've been really excited for this podcast.
Thank you. Me too.
First, let's just start about your first recruitment gig. That was a while ago. You've been in the industry a fair time.
I have, yeah. 2008. So I actually got my first job in recruitment when I was 16 years old.
16?
Yeah.
You'd be the world's youngest recruiter.
Yeah, definitely.
So
What
your
were you
whole-
doing?
Your first job and your whole job's always been recruitment besides like that stint at Suncorp.
I've never ever known anything else. And even at Suncorp, yeah, it was still recruitment as well. I was managing all the contractors and temp recruitment on site.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did you get a job as 16 and what were you doing?
Yeah, so I was working in the UK. I just finished school, wanted to make some money over summer to go away on holidays, and then I applied for actually a recruitment admin role. Got the role in recruitment admin, and I started helping doing expenses, and I quickly worked out how much money recruiters made. So I put my hand up and I was like, hey, I want to be a resourcer. And they were like, okay, we'll give you some jobs to help with. At first, I wasn't speaking to candidates, and then over time, it just evolved. I started making placements, and yeah, just
How old were you when you
took
made,
off.
or how young were you when you made your first placement?
I think probably 17.
Wow.
Yeah, because I was doing the admin and accounts for a good year or so, and then started taking on a bit of sourcing.
What was the placement? How old was the candidate? Well, talk us through it.
Do you know what? It was actually like this 50-year-old guy. He was like a stress engineer on aircrafts.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, okay, the most common little bit of imposter syndrome, I guess, most recruiters get when they first get in the industry, especially when they're younger, like 20 to 25, they're rolling into a recruitment job and they're telling like more experienced people how to get a job than they've got experience. And there's generally this imposter syndrome that kind of creeps in. How did you go with your imposter syndrome at 17 years old? Were you just like too young to pick up on it, or?
Do you know what? Honestly, I've never really thought about that, but now you've said it, I think genuinely I was just so oblivious that it didn't cross my mind, in all honesty. I just wanted the money, wanted to go over to Greece with my friends for the summer, so I just got on with it and made a few placements.
Did you end up actually going to Greece?
I did.
Oh, sweet.
And Spain in the
Awesome.
same year. I was like the richest 16-year-old ever.
So is 16 in the UK, you're still at school?
You finish school by then. Yeah.
Wow,
Wow.
okay.
So I finished school and then 1 month after got a job in the recruitment agency. So yeah, there was a short crossover.
And you're recruiting in aviation.
Aviation, yeah.
And what's recruitment in the UK like? What was it like back then coming out of the GFC? Is it really hardcore? Is it win at all costs? Is it like that?
Absolutely, yeah. I think there's a big difference in the UK market in comparison to Australia. I think the UK market is definitely a lot more savage. You definitely get screamed at, shouted at and abused a lot more. Maybe not so much these days, but back then, absolutely, that was like pretty normal. I would say you would have to work very, very hard, very KPI driven. Back then, it was very manual as well. So we didn't have all like the float emails and those kind of programs and systems that we have these days. So it was very much just about call after call after call. So it was just a totally different mindset.
Wow. And how did you advertise jobs?
We used, the job boards in the UK are called JobSite, Monster, Reed. So it was like the classics. It was the UK version of Seek.
Yep.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that
nice.
was all there. Yeah, I'm not that old.
So you started in 2008. The GFC happened in 2009. Were you a 360 consultant then, or were you still a resourcer? What happened at that GFC moment? And the reason why I'm asking this is because there's a lot of speculation around the economy right now that we're going to have some sort of next level GFC kind of event. Can you walk us through what happened when the GFC hit? Did you still have a job? Did you go, recruitment's not for me? What kind of happened there?
I was actually very lucky. So I was in a delivery consultant type of role. So we already had, I believe it was either a 3 or 5 year contract with the clients, the couple of clients that I recruited for. And in the space that I was recruiting in the aircraft industry, aircrafts need their maintenance. They need, the engineers to go out when required. So I don't think I got as heavily affected as some other consultants, in saying that the agency I was working for was making redundancies, but I was very fortunate that the accounts that I was managing very well, they weren't too affected. So in all honesty, it was, I think that was just chance. That was just complete luck of the account I was on at the time.
Wow.
Awesome.
Were they a big agency?
Not really, no. They had a technical division. They had a larger holding company, but the technical division had maybe 20 staff. So not huge.
It's a decent size.
Yeah.
I mean, I think statistics, the average recruitment agency has like less than 10 staff.
I actually learnt that from you. Isn't it 33% have less than 3 staff?
Yeah.
I heard that on one of your podcasts. That really surprised me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was super surprising too because, well, when you think about it deeper, it kind of makes sense. But the only recruitment agencies really that you know about are just the big ones. So you feel like you're just up against all these massive agencies, but realistically, you're probably up against way more individual contributors and small agencies and all that kind of thing.
And then niches are getting more and more refined and companies getting smaller and smaller.
Yes.
And so how did you end up coming to Australia?
Yeah, so it was 2015. I was loving my role, to be honest, but I just always wanted to come to Australia. It was always my dream. And even before I'd ever been to Australia, I would say to my family, I'm going to live there one day. And they'd be like, why? You've never been there. You don't even know what it's like. But I just had it in my head. So I came over, got a working holiday visa, travelled for about 10 months. And then at 2 months before I was supposed to go home, I was like, I can't go home. I need to get sponsored. But most companies would only sponsor you if you had 6 months left on your visa so you could pass probation. So I basically just had to absolutely hustle and ended up persuading somebody to sponsor me in the end. And that's how I ended up staying in Sydney and getting my permanent residency eventually.
So you've always been Sydney based?
Do you know what? At first, when I was doing the working holiday visa, I was actually in Melbourne for about 5 months. And then when I decided I wanted to get sponsored, I relocated to Sydney just because I knew I preferred it here and that's where I wanted to settle.
Yep. And what's UK life compared to here? Like, were you in London? Was it a bustling city and that's why you chose here, or?
No, it wasn't. So I'm from a tiny little town called Portsmouth and it's so small. There is really not much going on there. So that was my motivation, to be honest. I always knew that that's not where I wanted to be. I always wanted to work hard, achieve things, and that just doesn't happen in the small city that I'm from. So
How small is it, to put in perspective?
In terms of population?
Yeah, is it like a Parramatta?
Or is it like a Parks?
Orange, Dubbo.
Oh, yeah. It's not so much regional. So to give you an idea, I think in terms of size, it's something like 6 miles wide by 6 miles by 7 miles, something like that.
Oh,
so it's like tiny, but within that, I believe there's 250,000 people. So it's very densely populated. But it's tiny. There's just not much opportunity. You'd have to go to London if you wanted to get.
And what was growing up like? Were your parents always driven for you to be successful and get it done, or was it the opposite of that and that's why you've got this desire that you've created, or what was it like growing up?
Yeah, pretty much the opposite actually. So yeah, I didn't come from having much. I had to always fend for myself. So I think that's why I got my independence from a young age and I got a taste for it, and I've always just since then been like, when I want something, I'm like a dog with a bone. So yeah, and I think that came from having to be like that when I was young.
Yeah. And then your longest stint here is Hayes, is that right, in recruitment?
Yes, I was at Hayes for about 4 years.
Okay, so Declan and I have never worked in big agency before. We've spoken to a lot of big agency recruiters, and there's always this really polarizing feedback from some people love it, systems, processes, training, amazing. Some people hated it, KPI based, making you do things that like there was no reason for. How did you find Hayes? How did you find big agency recruitment?
Yeah, so I'd actually come from boutiques in the UK and went straight into Hayes. So actually it was very different for me. I found it quite difficult to adapt. I was very much used to autonomy and just getting it done. And what I found at Hayes is I would be doing what I needed to be doing, but then they'd say, well, why haven't you sent these emails? Why haven't you done 120 BD calls? But I'd filled all of my positions by making 80 BD calls, and I couldn't get my head around it. And I felt like it was very micromanaged. On reflection, I understand why they had to do that. They've got thousands of consultants they need to keep in check. It could seem like favoritism if one consultant is doing one thing and another's doing another thing. So I get why they have to set that standard, and it's very process driven. But ultimately, I do think two different types of consultants suit small versus large agencies. I think it's quite a different mentality, actually.
And what would you say the attributes between the both would be? If you were to be like, hey, if you're going to be successful in a small agency, you need to be X, Y, Z. And if you should work, or who should you be? And you should just work in big agency.
Great question. I would say if you were to work in a larger agency, you would probably be somebody who needed a bit more structure, somebody who's very organized, somebody who doesn't mind being somebody overseeing their work constantly, and also you would have to have limitations. So for example, if you recruit in a big agency, you've got a desk or a geographical location, and that's just it. Whereas in a boutique, you get a lot more autonomy. It's almost as though if you get the job, you can work on the job, you can build your client base. So in my opinion, I think there's a lot more opportunity in smaller companies. If you're a great consultant, because you can go out, you can make it your own, you can build your own relationships, you can negotiate your own fees. Whereas in a larger agency, I think you're a bit more pigeonholed to what you can do. It's just, I actually think as well, like there's pros and cons to both, but I do think there's a lot more advantage to working in a boutique.
Okay, so
Cool.
what about, would you have any idea on the success rate of a boutique recruiter going into a big agency, or a big agency recruiter going into a boutique agency? Is it usually like a boutique agency recruiter can get into a big agency, do okay, they're probably not going to have as much freedom and autonomy and enjoy their work as much, but a big agency recruiter going into a boutique agency will probably sink because they've just got so much autonomy that they're not used to. Is there any kind of thought process around that?
I do think it depends on the individual, in all honesty, and their motivations. So, for example, sometimes I'll get people from larger agencies register with me and want to go to a boutique because they're high billers in their big agency, but they've got a cap. They can't get any further than that because their desk could just get broken down. So they want to go to a boutique because they've got that potential to earn more and do more as well. On the flip side, I think if somebody comes from a boutique, sometimes they might absolutely hate it. It's a hustle. It's harder. It is harder work, but it's a higher reward as well. But I do think if you come from a boutique and go to a larger agency, it's probably because you want a little bit of an easier life. Maybe money's not your motivation so much. But I mean, you get more opportunity to fill more roles because there's more clients to go for.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you heard that first. If you're at a boutique agency and you're going to a big agency, what you're trying to do is you're trying to wind down. You're trying to take the easy road.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not putting words in your mouth.
but in all honesty, like, what would the incentive be when you can absolutely smash it in a boutique, do really well, own all of your clients, build that out, bill very well? Why would you go to a bigger agency to get less money ultimately, or have your desk broken down? In saying that, if somebody's motivation is they want to be a team leader next, if they're in a boutique, there may not be the opportunity for that. So like I said, people do have different motivations. Perhaps team leader is their goal and they're working in a boutique with 3 people and that's impossible. So there's that as well.
Yeah. Okay, so you were there 4 years and then you decided to start your own agency.
There's actually a little bit of a gap between that. It's not on LinkedIn, and it's not on LinkedIn because it's not relevant to my experience.
What did you do?
Okay.
So you weren't a recruiter the whole time.
I had this thing in my head. I was like, I want to get into e-commerce. I was obsessed with this fact I was going to get into e-commerce. So I did, and I opened an online store. And then COVID hit, and nobody was buying the products because what I was selling was like swimwear and festival wear, we got locked down. Nobody could do anything. Nobody could go overseas. So that dream very
What was it
quickly
called?
got crushed. It was called Festival Hall Sydney.
Festival
Festival
Hall
Hall.
Sydney.
I like
Nice.
it.
The OGs will probably remember that.
And what were you selling? Like, what were the products?
Festival clothes, swimwear. It was all just very much summer wear.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
ultimately. So I did that. I bought a lot of stock.
Do you still have some?
I ultimately ended up selling it on a website called Depop. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's basically like a clothing marketplace. It's like an eBay but for clothes.
Yep.
Because we got locked down, nobody could travel, so I got rid of that. And then actually in between that, I then started being like, okay, well, how can I generate revenue in the quickest way possible? So what I thought is, okay, I'll set up an online course and I'll do coaching for job seekers in order to get them job ready and interview ready. So I built out all this online program. There was redundancies left, right and center. And then the market flipped 3 months later and there was an abundance of choice for candidates and they didn't need the interview program. So that was like my second business idea that just went straight down the drain. So that was that. And then I thought, you know what, what the hell am I doing? And that's how RecEx got born ultimately, because from that point, I then realized that a lot of agencies needed recruiters. So I've got friends who have agencies themselves. So I started actually helping them find recruiters. And that's how I got into Rectorec. I'd actually never recruited Rectorec until RecEx.
That is crazy. So you had 10 years experience in the job and you're like, and it only just dawned on you because of a couple of failed mistakes in business or changing the markets that you're like, oh, I should just get back in recruitment. And you didn't think about going back to an agency?
No, because I thought if I'm going to start again and build a desk, I'll build it for myself. Yeah.
And what was your first day like? Because we're experiencing that with a lot of people at the moment joining Recruiter and going through that. Was there a definitive day that you remember to be like, right, I'm starting my agency today and this is RecEx? Or was it just like, oh, I've got a client now and I'm going to... this is it?
Pretty much like that, to be honest. I actually had no intention of ever starting a recruitment agency, which is weird because I had so much experience, so it makes sense. But I feel like I got to a point where I had so much experience, I was like rebelling against it. I was like, what else is there? This is all I know. And then I tried a couple of other things and then obviously fell back to recruitment, which is where I still am now. But yeah, ultimately where it started is agencies needed consultants. I've got a great network with consultants. I know a lot of people in the UK who were referring staff to me. So that was pretty much it, to be honest. Started placing positions for my friends or people that I knew. Then when I started posting about it, other people that I knew would refer me. So that's pretty much how I built my client base. It was based on referrals.
Interesting.
Wow.
And so, okay, so you started a Rectorec and initially you had friends that had agencies and they just said, hey, Jess, do you reckon you could find a recruiter for me? Yeah. And you're like, yeah, I've actually got a huge network on LinkedIn. I'll just message a few people. What was your first deal? Like, walk us through your first deal where you got your first invoice paid into your account. Was that like the most exciting day ever? Was it like a bit of a revelation or a light bulb go off, or how did that happen?
You know what? It was actually very hard to place the first position. And the reason being is because there was just so much red tape in the recruitment industry at that time, with visas up in the air and the borders closed and people not being able to move. So I actually ended up placing on behalf of one of my best friend's agencies, and I got her a guy. And then he started in that position and he got on really well. And it was pretty much just invoiced, got paid that. It wasn't really, I didn't really think too much about it, to be honest. But then I thought, well, what am I going to do with these other candidates that weren't successful for this role? And I need to do something with them. So that's when I started branching out from there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And so now you're fully fledged Rectorec.
Yeah.
And how is the Rectorec market? It's obviously a candidate short market, right?
Yeah.
Because we had
Gemma.
We had Gemma on. Did you hear Gemma's
Shine?
I don't believe
she's a
I've heard
Rectorec
that
too.
one. No, not that one. I'll give it a listen though.
Yeah, so she's a Rectorec as well. She's in Brisbane. Did she come from Sydney?
Yeah, she's been in Brisbane for 2 years now.
Yeah, and her biggest thing is trying to find good recruiters is really, really hard. If they're really a really good recruiter, there's really no reason for them to leave unless something terrible happens at their business.
Yeah.
And so she found that, usually max you'd be placing 2 or 3 candidates a month from a really small client base of like 10 or 15 clients. And it was really you just service your 10 or 15 clients, and as soon as you get a candidate, you just float them in there. And there wasn't a massive amount of BD. I didn't think there was a huge amount of BD there. It was just a really close, tight-knit kind of recruitment process? Is that the same as you? Do you handle things differently? Since you've never had Rectorec experience, you're kind of just making it up as you go, really?
Yeah, I was. I've got my head around it now.
Yeah,
I know what I'm doing now.
No,
but
I
yeah,
don't
for
mean
the
you don't know
first
what
year,
you're
I was very confused.
No, but if you treat the
Yeah.
what I think Blake's trying to say is if
Yeah.
you treat it like a typical recruiter when you expand on that, or you just think it's this little niche that no one hires.
Yeah, you know what? It's by far the toughest market I've ever recruited in my life. I've got a higher purpose for wanting to recruit Rectorec. I know I could make a lot more revenue a lot easier in other avenues or other desks, but I'll go into that later. But yeah, ultimately exactly the same challenges, very candidate short. If somebody's doing well in their position, there's no real incentive. You have to kind of get them in that moment where they're unhappy, or perhaps there's movement, perhaps their boss leaves, for example, and it shakes the team up a little bit. Sometimes commission structures change. That's
happening
a
a
common
lot
one.
lately, hey?
It is.
Is it just lately? Or is it just
I'd say
happening all the
more
time?
lately. I'd say more lately, yes. I'm starting to notice a few changes in the market as well, with different desks, which perhaps were billing very well over the last couple of years, and they're not so much anymore. So desks are changing a little bit. So what I find is my main goal is lead generation and outreach, and that's a big part of why I focus on building my personal brand on LinkedIn. Because it's all about getting people at the right time. So people know my name and they want to come to me first, because it's very rare that I will, even though I do all of the headhunting, the market mapping, send literally thousands of messages and emails, you don't get good consultants register until they're ready to register. So you want to be that person who they want to register with. So that's often how I get my candidates. It'll be I'll message them at some point, 6 months later, they're ready for the move, and I'll work with them and I'll go out to all of the clients.
And what's the registration process? Can you define that? Is that just, hey, Jess, I'm keen for a job, and you're like, all right, you're registered? Or is there, what does that mean?
Yeah, so I'll do an initial qualification call, just a standard, get to know exactly what they want, double check that it's realistic as well, because quite often recruiters will come to me and they'll say, oh, I want to go internal, but it's very hard for me to place internal because I specialise predominantly in agency recruitment. Just register that I can help them. If so, I'll do a Teams interview with them, really go through in detail. And the way that I interview my candidates is not so much based on skill, like I will question in terms of the achievements and billings and all of that, but it's very much like, who are you? What's your motivations? What culture do you thrive within? How do you like to be managed? What's your aspirations? And the reason behind that is recruiters have an absolute abundance of choice. They can go to any agency at the moment. They're probably being tapped on the shoulder by 8 if they're active in the market. So for me, it's all about, okay, where will they fit the best and what opportunity can I provide them which suits their long-term career goals? It's not about just getting a job. It's all about like the perfect opportunity for them.
So does that mean you work with them exclusively? Do you say, look, I'll help you get a job as long as you're not going to go talk to 10 other Rectorecs or start applying everywhere? Or what type of commitment do you try and get from your candidates before doing all the work and trying to get them a new role?
That's a tough one. I'll always try and get exclusive where possible, but the reality is they're being tapped on the shoulder and they're not going to just say no and limit their own opportunities. So that's a really tough one to manage. I've lost a lot of placements through doing so much work, and then a company will tap them on the shoulder and it just happens to be the perfect opportunity for them, which is very frustrating.
Welcome to recruitment.
Very frustrating.
Yeah.
I've never in any market had it to the extent that I have it in Rectorec. It's, yeah.
Are recruiters like notoriously flaky?
Oh my God, the flakiest.
Oh,
Do you know how many people drop out of interviews an hour before? And I'm like, you know that this is just
an hour.
Just don't. And it's so common. An hour before, or they email me, can I do this on Teams? Like the morning of. I'm like,
just complete arrogance.
Is
Is it arrogance or
I don't know.
they're just busy?
I think they just got an abundance of choice. They don't care. Honestly, I think that's what it is. Like if they don't go to one interview, they've probably got 7 more that they can attend. So unless it's their top pick.
How do you knock them down a peg? Because in my agency, in my agency, you know, you get recruiters, you get candidates that come in, they think they're the big dog, they think they've got a lot of options, and we're going through a bit of an internal training process on how to knock a candidate down a little bit, get them a bit more realistic, get them in line a little bit, like not treating everyone like, I don't really care, like you should be thankful that I'm here, that kind of mentality.
Yeah.
So what is your process on knocking a recruiter down a peg and
Yeah.
getting them a bit more realistic?
In all honesty, I do that from the very initial conversation with them. If they are being unrealistic, I'll tell them straight up. And if I think someone's going to be difficult to work with, I won't register them. And the reason being is because sometimes I'll get people and they've got a year experience and say, I want a 90K base. I want to work from home 3 days a week. And I'm like, I can't help you. So I'll be very transparent and I'll let them know this is the market. If that's what you want, good luck. But in my world, that doesn't exist. So I just think the transparency is what knocks them down a bit. And to be honest, I don't like wasting my time registering people that aren't dead serious about it. So I actually don't register a huge amount of people, but the people that I work with, I know are great candidates. So
And you know they're placeable.
they're
and it's gonna be a good
placeable.
experience.
They're placeable, absolutely. I don't really work on volumes. I work on relationships and quality.
Okay, so let's change pathways a little bit to your content creation talents, let's call it.
Yeah.
So you're really, really heavy on LinkedIn. You got an awesome YouTube. I look at your YouTubes
You
all
like
the time.
it?
I like the videos. So walk me through when you decided I'm going to be content heavy.
Yes.
Was there a moment in time that you thought, stuff this cold calling, I'm just going to make a video and pump it?
100%, yes. So when I first started in Rectorec and I was doing everything, all the right things, and by this point I've been around 12 years, so I knew I was doing the right things, and I just couldn't get candidates, and I was like, there's got to be a better way. And I knew that the one-on-one contact, you only have a limited amount of hours in a day. Let's just say you can speak to 15 people max per day, and that's if they all answer, which is not going to happen. And I just thought, I need to reach more people. How am I going to do that? So I started doing a little bit of research, and I was considering, like, who in the market, like, what is it that they do, the most popular consultants, or not even recruitment consultants, like the best personal branders in the world, the best speakers in the world, like, what do they do? And what I realized is it's content creation, value add, and it's reaching the masses. So I basically just went on a mission to understand how I could reach the masses and reach thousands of people with every single post, as opposed to just one-on-one calls, which was clearly a waste of my time. What I also found is, like on a marketing funnel, it's like brand awareness, then consideration, and then you put them through the funnel. That very top level, that awareness phase, is what takes the most time, but it's also the least value because it's just the qualification, the cold stage. So my goal was get as many people into that top awareness bracket as possible. So I focused on building my personal brand, crafted that out over time, a lot of trial and error, but figured out what worked. And I actually documented my entire journey as well so that I could repeat what worked and then scrap what didn't. And yeah, ultimately it led to my LinkedIn. Now my LinkedIn, actually get a lot of people come to me, a lot of inbound leads.
Was 5 to 15 leads a day?
Yeah, messages I'll get.
Is that clients or candidates or just a mix of both?
A mixture of both, and a lot of referrals. I get heaps of referrals as well.
So how can you be saying you could build more in other industries? Because if you're getting that much traffic, you'd probably be pretty high up there with billings for a Rectorec.
Yeah, I think I probably do more than the industry average, in all honesty.
You're probably Australia's best Rectorec.
Bold statement. I'll take it.
Because you've got a couple of staff now as well, hey?
Yes,
we can
I
chat
do.
about that after, but I'm keen to stay on this content train.
Yep.
So, and then you said back in when you were doing your swimwear and stuff, you remember that the OGs, remember that.
Yeah.
So it's been 3 years because you're coming up to your 2 years, 9 months in RecEx.
Yep.
So what has it done for you? Like, how far were you into RecEx before you started? Or was the content back when you were doing you would have had to doing pretty heavy content in both those e-com businesses anyway?
Yeah, so I actually used to have an Instagram which is deactivated at the moment with 30,000 followers. So I knew a bit about building brands beforehand. I know the reason I haven't activated it, I've been thinking about it, and I'll go into that in a minute, but I've been thinking about it in order to post videos, so personal branding and recruitment videos. But the target audience on that Instagram is totally opposite. So I'm thinking it's probably a waste of time because obviously if the algorithms and your impressions are down, then it doesn't get pushed through the feed to others. So part of me thinks I just want to start again with it all, to be honest. So that's where I'm at with that at the moment. But yeah, I definitely know a lot about building brands and the whole LinkedIn thing. And I guess I'll mention, so tomorrow I've got an online webinar where I'm actually going to give some news to the world, which I haven't gone public with yet. But by the time this is broadcast, it'll be public, so I'm allowed to say it. But I've actually created a second company called Meta Brand. I'm going public with it tomorrow, and it's a personal branding program for recruiters. So it's teaching them
epic.
how to generate leads for their business, no matter what desk that you're on, through content, through value-adding content, building your credibility, your authority. It's about getting inbound leads. It's about getting clients and candidates come to you, which are by far the highest quality as well. So it's basically about automating your time, reaching the masses, reaching thousands of people. So, yeah.
Perfect. What's
That
the
is
price?
exciting.
Going live soon, yeah.
Yeah, we'll embed it in the episode.
Yeah,
Give
amazing.
you a shout out. Clip this up. And
thank
then
you.
what's the price point? Is it an 8-week course, 10-week course? Is it just one and done and you get all your content? How does it work?
Yep. So the initial program is, it will be a 2-day in-person event in Sydney, and I'll plan to go to Melbourne, Brisbane as well. Price point is, are you going to publish this? Because I don't want to go live with the price point until people have done the online webinar.
Don't worry about the price.
Oh,
Okay.
oh
yeah.
I thought it was an online. Are you following up with an online course after this?
So it'll be a 2-day in-person event. So that's, imagine if you know nothing about personal branding, you want to get set up, you want your profile optimized, you want your content pillars, what to post, when to post, how to structure it, and basically the entire blueprint that I've done. That will be the 2 days, and then they'll be given their content calendar for 90 days. After that 90 days, if they want to go onto the advanced program, that's an 8-week group coaching program
Cool.
to basically review their content and tweak it and elevate that. So by the goal is they'll get themselves up and running, then they'll tweak it, and after that period of time, they'll be good to go.
I was just going to say, so how are you going to manage that?
That's what I was
with
about to
recruiting?
say.
Because Declan and I are going through this journey at the moment of finding balance between our agencies and ex-recruiter and confessions of a recruiter and all this crazy stuff. And unfortunately, you just don't have enough time in the day.
No.
So it's going to be very interesting to see how you're going to manage your time and how that will look for you between Meta Brands and RecEx.
Yep.
Have you thought about how you're going to manage the two?
I have, yeah. So honestly, I feel like I'm always time poor. I always work and I love it. So I'm actually very happy to do that. I'm in a phase of my life where I'm like, set myself up as my goal and my priority. Everything else is second. My social life doesn't exist, and I'm fine with that right now. But ultimately, I do something called outsourced $10 tasks. So have you ever heard of
No,
that?
hit us with it.
No. So basically anything which doesn't generate revenue, so what I call like $10 tasks. So that's, for example, creating content and graphics on Canva, market mapping. So for example, downloading CVs, coding the database, all this stuff. I actually outsource everything. So what I focus on is building relationships and communication. I do obviously all of my own LinkedIn posts as well. That's something that's very important to me because obviously it's my tone of voice. But everything else, resume formatting, research, market mapping, talent pooling, I actually outsource all of that.
Awesome. And so
Yeah.
who do you find, like, what do? You type in, $10, what's the term again?
$10 task.
$10 task done for you, Sydney. Like, how do we find these, these outsourced virtual assistants?
It's a virtual assistant ultimately. Yeah,
Yeah.
honestly, just Google. I've been through some companies before. So for example, there's like virtual assistant brands. They just charge you a little bit of a markup to interview, source and find the person for you. So that's what I've done. So yeah.
Fiverr, Upwork, or you just use recruiters that specialize in it?
I've used Upwork before, but it wasn't the best in all honesty. So now I actually just go through a company that specializes in finding VAs.
And has this come about for a reason, or are you just in tune with what your time is worth, and you realized, because when you start in business, you can get trapped in this world where you think all those $10 tasks are worth millions of dollars, and you get sucked in and thinking, wow, I've had the busiest day. I've organized my hit list over this week. I'm planning on sending this email campaign next week. I've planned my schedule post. What a great week. And really, you've just lost yourself potentially tens of thousands of dollars because you haven't done anything revenue generating. So what was the point where you clicked? Because a lot of people go through business, and that's probably, they could stay a small business for a long time because they never understand what they're doing. So how did you identify that and do it in such a smart way?
Yeah, so probably about the same time that I really started getting into my personal branding, I was just going heavy on how on earth do I automate my time and make my life easier. So obviously part of that was, sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
How did you
again.
how did you go about realizing that I need to outsource to virtual assistants, and was it a natural thing that you just thought of, or did you learn it somewhere, or?
Yeah, so I actually got into that when I started going heavy on the personal branding and learning how to automate my time. So it's very important to me that I focused on revenue generating tasks. So that was ultimately business development and candidate calls. Everything else I wanted to outsource. I actually used to spend my evenings, like 5 hours. Let's just say I got a new job on. I would market map everything on LinkedIn, add to projects so I could contact them all the next day. And I thought, I can't do this all day, every day. So that's just when I started gradually. Had somebody doing that exact task for me. She was a recruiter with 4 years experience, and it worked very well. And she was doing that full time. And every single day I'd get a job in. The next day I'd have 200 candidates to speak to. And I was like, oh, okay, it's working. So then I gradually just started anything and everything that wasn't going to make me money. I started finding people to do it for me. All the video editing, the reels, like adding the captions, the Canva, the creations, all of that. The thumbnails for YouTube.
Okay,
You're the first recruiter that because we like to think we do a similar thing.
Yeah.
You're the first recruiter we've ever met in 40-something episodes that sat down and said, hey, this is what I do.
Work smart.
Yeah. Because look at the big agencies. They're too big to change. So they've just got prehistoric, outdated CVs and everything flows on, and they don't really prioritize content or create that culture.
Yeah.
And it's just a flow-on effect.
Yeah.
$10 task. That's awesome. Have you heard about the rule where you can work out what you're worth per hour and what you should do less of?
No. How does that work?
So you can do this for yourself or your staff. And if you time your revenue of what you bill times the hours worked by the year, then you work out your hourly rate.
Ah,
and then you ask yourself, hey, say I can't remember the numbers right now, but say you're worth $250 or $500 an hour. If you're there sending an invoice, or if you're doing anything that you wouldn't pay someone $500 an hour, why are you on paper paying yourself that? Not that you actually get paid that, because it's based off your total revenue. But yeah, that means just revenue opportunity cost.
That's actually almost the principle behind $10 tasks. Like if a thumbnail on YouTube will take me an hour to create and I can pay someone $10, I can make more than $10 in an hour by registering a candidate, So that's ultimately how my mind operates with that. It's a similar manner.
That's awesome. Hey, just wanted to jump in here. We got a confessions hotline, so give us a call, send us a text. If you want to share any juicy stories, or even just ask a question that's been on your mind, because we'd love to hear from you. The phone number is 0485 865 483. Enjoy the rest of the show.
How about managing the VAs though? Because I've had VAs in my business for maybe 4 years, and I've had a lot of them come and go. One of them stuck around for a really long time. He's an absolute gun. I think at one point we had 8 or 9.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I find the biggest challenge for people adopting the $10 task theory or outsourcing essentially administrative tasks is managing a virtual assistant effectively to get the right results out of them, because it can be quite draining, like telling a VA, like figuring them out how to source a candidate or update the database or whatever it might be. Do you have any strategies around communication to get the most out of the VAs?
Yeah, I've actually had a fair bit of trial and error on this as well. I've definitely had some not great ones. I've had some awesome ones as well. I think my strategy is just to be very, very clear, like almost over communicate the expectations, do daily catch up. So I do like a 9 a.m, just 15-minute catch up every morning. Like, this is what it is. This is what needs to be done by the end of the day. This is how we do it. If I've got any old guidelines or something I can share on my screen to show, I'll try and give as much and make it as obvious as possible. I think it's also about creating a culture where they feel like they can actually speak to you. So some feedback that I get from my team is that we used to be so scared to ask our boss. We thought we were doing it wrong, but with you, like, we feel very, very comfortable, because I won't say you're doing that wrong. That's rubbish. Why have you done it that way? I'll review it with them and actually give them the time. And the next time they grasp it. But I think it's in that clear communication, but also treating them with respect as well, which I think sometimes they're not used to.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I find the daily communication's a really big one.
Yeah.
Because a lot of VAs, they're generally like Indonesia, this kind of area, Philippines, Indonesia, this kind of stuff, and their culture is very like like they're the subordinate. They just listen to what they're told and they do it, and they don't ask questions. And if they were to maybe probe you on why we're doing it this way, or there could be a better way for me to do this for you, that kind of transaction of communication, they don't do it because they feel like, oh, you're the boss, you know everything, I'll just do what you say, at the detriment of being less productive than they would be. So I think that's definitely an interesting one for people that are outsourcing on how to communicate with VAs is a really important one. So, okay, so you've got a is it a LinkedIn Live?
LinkedIn Live tomorrow. LinkedIn Live, yes.
That is awesome. So
it's my first one. I am terrified.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. I am like, oh my God, if there's a tech issue, what the hell do I do? Yeah. So
how do you get LinkedIn Live? Do we have LinkedIn Live?
Yeah, we've got LinkedIn Live.
yeah.
Why don't we do LinkedIn Live? Jess is crushing us on the content game right now.
Well, this is what we
Sign up to my program. I'll teach you how.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
That could be a really good program for our recruiters.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I can give you information about it as well and all the content, what it will entail.
Maybe share it after this and we'll pump it this week.
Yeah.
Yep,
Amazing.
I think so.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Should we try our new segment?
Speaking of new things, we've got something new to bring to the table.
All right.
There's a little deck of cards there.
Okay.
So there's some questions.
Okay.
Pick one off and...
No. I reckon this is what we're going to do. This is going to be our trial and error right now. Okay, so I'm going to fan it out. Or do you just pick the top?
Oh, well, yeah, fan it out. At least there's multiple options.
Okay.
Don't set me up.
Maybe we are. All right, so what we've done here, we've basically got a deck of cards. And we've got questions on the cards. And you've got to answer the questions.
All right.
Okay? All right, so we'll just... I don't know what the actual questions are. There's 40 questions. We're not going to go through all of them, obviously.
What's the most ridiculous excuse you've heard for not going to an interview? Oh, God, where do I start?
How fitting. You should have a lot of them.
Yeah.
From what you were saying.
Yeah,
you know
wow,
what?
where do I start? What would be the most ridiculous excuse? I don't think anything would surprise me these days. Honestly, you could tell me anything in the world and I would be like, okay, because I've really heard it all. I would say probably the most ridiculous excuse that I've ever heard would, I don't know. Sorry, I've got a bit of a mind block. But just...
You were saying before you're getting emails like an hour before.
Oh, yeah, but that's standard to me.
Are recruiters really shitty at creating excuses on why they don't go to an interview? Or is it other industries? Or do recruiters just go, oh, I'm just not going to go?
What about even back in the day, like in the UK, in Hayes?
I didn't used to get it. In the
Really?
UK, no, if people want a job, they want a job. In Australia, people are like, they're too casual, they're too calm, and they have no urgency, I find, a lot of the time.
So the UK is very direct. And
of course,
it
yeah.
done.
It was rare for me to get interview dropouts. I honestly...
Yeah, I don't get them. I'm very rare. I can't remember someone going, hey, mate, I'm not going to this interview.
Really? Wow,
No.
okay.
Here's one off topic. I'll give you one of mine. This is actually first day. The guy didn't turn up. The guy turned up 6 hours late on his first day. And the
Did you know he was starting on that day?
Yep. And the reason is he found a box of kittens on the side of the road and he pulled over and had to grab the box of kittens and then had to go get milk and then feed them and then wait for someone to come pick the kittens up. And
I can't trump that.
My client called me. He's like, mate, he's like a 60-year-old man and he's pulling over. He sells tiles. He's like a tile sales guy, basically like a national tile selling tiles. And my client calls me. He's like, mate, this fucking guy, he's found a box of kittens on the fucking sidewalk, and apparently he's not coming in until this afternoon. I was like, oh, what? Really? He's like, no shit. He said he's going to pick up some fucking milk and some little bottles. I was like, oh no. That was,
wow.
I reckon that was one of my biggest funny ones. All right, should we go again?
Yeah, let's go again.
Okay, yeah, I'm just going to fan this out. There's some saucy ones in there, and then there's some like very
rogue ones.
vanilla ones. Nah, vanilla. I'd say vanilla.
Let's see what this one is. Has a client or candidate ever hit on you?
Ooh.
Yes, actually.
Really?
Yeah, but I don't think directly, but I think people can be a little bit flirty. Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, because of the way that I look, like I always present myself in a certain way, I actually feel like that can let off an impression as well, as to like, oh, you know, she's so chatty, you know, she she's like giving us time, but it's like I'm at a client meeting, of course I'm going to build rapport and build that relationship. That's just what I'm like anyway. I'm very extroverted and I can get on with literally anyone, but I find that some people before have kind of been like a little much.
Is she like
Is she interested?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not.
Okay, so
Because this is a segment I want to talk about, because like my partner or fiance now, Dee, even Amy at work, all the girls, they get smashed with the grossest messages from guys on LinkedIn.
do they?
Yeah, mate.
Yeah.
Ask your stuff. I'm sure they'd have heaps. Deanna had to she was like, I'm sick of marketing on LinkedIn because I just get hit up all the time. Like, she's an interior designer. She's got her own business. And
What do they say?
oh, you're cute, sexy. You wanna go out.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I want to do a segment. Instead of mean tweets, we do sleazy LinkedIn, and girls just read the messages that come out from guys.
Can we call them out as well with
Yep.
their name?
Yeah.
Yeah, give them their handle.
Yeah. Oh, well, I
Yeah,
didn't
it's
realize that
bad.
was a
Mate,
thing.
it's really
yeah, it's
bad.
actually bad.
It's what? So me just DMing those girls saying,
You're-
you're cute, what a job. Yeah,
100%.
okay.
Well, that might have been how you got Kat. Well, his girlfriend, mother of a couple of children,
Yeah.
was a candidate once.
Oh, okay. Did you hit on her on LinkedIn?
No, I didn't hit on her on LinkedIn. She actually slid in my DMs in Instagram.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and this was probably 5 years ago. We've been together maybe 5 years. We've got a second kid on the way.
Oh,
So when he says girlfriend, we're kind of a little bit more serious than boyfriend and girlfriend. But
Okay.
I haven't proposed
You
yet.
haven't proposed, yeah, so you still
she's
are
probably going to be
default.
watching.
she's listening.
going to be
She's
listening
like,
to this.
"Ooh."
I'm getting you that ring, Kat.
Yeah. It was actually quite funny. On our first year anniversary, she framed our first ever Instagram conversation of us hitting on each other. Well, her hitting on me, I should say. And it was something like, hey, you know, I heard you're in recruitment, you know, can you help me get a job? And I think at the time she was in like admin or something like this. And it was not the industry that I recruited. And I was like, yeah, I'm sure I could find something. and then we caught up and the rest is history. So, so.
I love that.
Yeah, but that's enough about me. Back to you.
Don't get shy.
Okay, so what do they do when they try and hit on? They're not as direct as, hey, you know, you're hot or anything like what you were saying, Declan, surely.
Yeah,
I've
not
seen them.
direct in person. Sometimes messages, honestly, I haven't had that in a little while, to be honest. Maybe something to do with my new profile pic, not sure. But yeah, no, just in person, I feel like people can be just flirty to the point where I can be like, come on, this is a business relationship, like settle down a little bit.
So what do you do there? How do you manage that?
I think because I'm quite a direct person, I think I will just be a bit, you know, I won't tolerate it. I'll just go straight back to the conversation about jobs or terms or, you know, the culture or,
So you
I
will
can brush it
ignore them.
off. I can brush it off quite
Yeah.
easily, but also not in a rude way. I guess it's just a case of just being like, ha, next, you know, move on to the job brief or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. I really didn't expect people like hitting people up in the DMs in LinkedIn out of any place. All right, should we go again?
Yeah.
All right.
These
Do
are
you-
good.
Do you want to pull one?
Do you want me to read one?
Yeah, you read
Or
one
give
to
one
Jess.
to Jess. Okay. All right, this will be good. It's got nothing to do with deadlines. What's the worst client interview process you've ever experienced?
The worst client interview process, I would probably say the most difficult clients to work with, and maybe not so much Rectorec here because recruiters know how it all works, but previously in previous roles it would be, for example, a new manager who perhaps doesn't know how to interview. They want to add all these layers in. They want 6 interviews for a customer service role, you know. So I think it's, just working with clients who don't really know the process. They want a perfect candidate, which we all know doesn't exist. There's give and take. And I think it's adding too many layers into the process. They're probably the worst ones that I had. But then also the stubborn ones that don't want to listen and say, no, we need 6 interview processes, or, you know, whatever it may be. I've definitely had that before. Yeah, I've had people who want to have a lot of layers, meet this person, meet that person, meet the team, go for coffee. And it's just, it's overkill. It's too much, especially in this market. Like perhaps a few years back where the market wasn't so candidate short, you could add in a couple of layers, maybe 3 max. But yeah, it's...
So how do you manage their expectations? Let's say you're speaking to Billy Bob and he's a sales manager and he wants a new recruiter, or a billing manager and he wants a new recruiter, and he goes, oh, look, you know, first step is I just want to meet for a coffee. Second step, face-to-face. Then they're going to meet another team member. Then they'll meet my boss. And then, you know, we'll do a psych test, and then we'll have one more informal catch up.
Yeah.
How do you, what's your next, what do you say next?
Well, I would always educate on the market in that case. Like, we need to make moves now. I also try my very best. If somebody's interested in a candidate, next day get them in. I try and leave like a 48-hour gap, absolute maximum, because ultimately we lose people otherwise. So it's all about just educating them and having that relationship as well, where they trust that. They're not just thinking you're a pushy recruiter that's just trying to get a candidate in front of them. I think it's all about, you know, setting their expectations, giving them information about who else is available on the market. If this is a great candidate, they're within the budget that they're looking to pay, then just confirming with them that this is somebody you need to meet, this is somebody you need to get over the line. So,
and what's a fair salary for a recruiter these days? Say you got your 1 to 2 years in the industry. What's it?
90K, work from home, 3 days.
Oh God. That's what they all want. It's actually very hard for me to answer that. All agencies pay a very, very different salary package. Some will pay lower base, higher commission, and they want people who are motivated by that, won't tolerate anything else. Some companies are like, whatever, we'll just pay any base. We don't really care. We just need staff. It really varies.
True.
And industry to industry varies, I find, as well.
What's the wildest salary package you've ever gotten a candidate?
There was a candidate, she had 8 months experience in the construction industry, which typically pays a little bit more. And I got 110K base in an agency.
Why?
Yeah.
How?
Because they really, really needed staff. They were losing so much money, clients and revenue, that they were like, we don't care if she can do the job. And she had that bit of experience, and she'd done well in that amount of time as well. So they just were like, we'll just do it.
How much of a pay increase was that for her?
She was on, I believe, 80, if I remember rightly.
80,
She
no
was
experience.
on 80, so she was technically actually in a sourcer role for a little bit before, and then 8 months recruitment experience with the BD as well.
Wow. Is she still in the role?
She is.
Loving it?
Yes, loving it, yeah.
No pay increases yet?
No, not that I know of, actually. No, this was a little while ago, so yeah, I probably didn't ask if she is. But no, great commission structure as well, to be honest. She's probably killing it. She's so young as well, so yeah, she's probably making a very good
on her
salary, yeah.
How many people do you place that have never been in recruitment?
Depends on the client. Actually, I was very, very busy with placing trainee recruiters at one point, particularly in the healthcare and medical industry. There was a point that's what everybody wanted. They wanted sales backgrounds. But at the minute, my requirement is mostly for 360 experience. So it just depends. I've done bulk recruitment of trainee consultants before and got a few of them in at any one time. But it just, it depends what the market's doing. At the minute, the market's gone a little bit quieter, and I feel like consultants are working double as hard to make the same amount of placements as what they were 2 years ago, which is probably actually where it should be. It's more stable now, but I think consultants who perhaps joined the industry in the last few years, they're stressed. They're like, oh my God, I'm working double as hard to get the same amount of placements. So there's definitely a lot of movement from that front, which is what that's meant is the agencies now need more experience because it's tougher. It's more competitive now.
Where do you see the market going over the next 1 to 5 years?
Tough to say. I think it depends on industry as well. So, for example, healthcare, medical is never really going to go anywhere. IT's obviously dropped off the face of the earth lately.
No one would have expected that.
IT was my busiest until March. I made a placement at the beginning of March, and after that, straight down. Yeah.
You haven't placed out an IT recruitment agency in 3 months?
No, and haven't had any jobs on. And I've got quite a lot of IT agencies that I work with as well. No need. There's a few different reasons behind it. So in the private sector, obviously there was all the redundancies with the Googles and, you know, the Amazons of the world. And then also on the government side of things, they're going through the elections at the moment. So that's meant there's a hiring freeze. So it's just IT is just not the place to be right now.
What is the place to be? Healthcare.
Healthcare, medical for sure. Construction as well is huge at the moment.
Look how
It's
many
my
cranes are
busiest
up.
area. Yeah, construction and blue collar, or even property. So any senior property roles,
Yeah,
that's
that
where
is
I'm
normal.
busiest at the moment. Yeah.
So what's the split between the temp recruiters and the perm recruiters that you place?
Do you mean split as in the?
Like, do you make 60% of the roles you fill are with perm recruiters and 40% temp, or?
Yes. So all of my roles are permanent, pretty much. I'm
Oh, I
starting.
mean the people that run the desks.
Oh, sorry. Split. Yeah, varies. Just depends. It depends on the desk. Yeah. So healthcare, there's quite a lot of locum. So sending locum doctors out to regional hospitals.
That's like what Cornerstone Medical do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty much. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly what they do actually. And
Have you ever placed with them?
I haven't. No.
Have you tried?
No, I actually reached out. I reached out after I watched the Confessions of
To
a
Sam?
Recruiter podcast to Sam, and I just said, "Hey, great podcast." She was awesome. She's so inspirational.
Oh, she's like, we're
so
just getting
smart.
started, and she's got a $70 million company.
Yeah, she's so smart. So yeah, I just sent her a quick message just saying, "Hey, loved your podcast."
Awesome.
That was it. Yeah, she's in Brisbane though, isn't she?
She
and
is.
Just Brisbane-based.
I'm predominantly recruiting Sydney at the minute. I don't want to spread myself too thin, so I haven't really touched Brisbane or Melbourne to be honest yet. I pretty much just recruit Sydney recruiters at the moment.
True. And what's it like? You've got a couple of staff now. They've
Yeah.
been with you for a month?
Yes, so yeah, just over a month now.
And what was the theory of onboarding two at the same time?
I actually had them start on the same day, and the reason being is because I wanted them to go through training together and then leverage off one another if they had any questions.
Great.
So
I used to do that as well, but I was probably a bit more cynical with starting two at the same time because I thought chances
One's
are one
gonna
of them's
work
going to yeah, one's not going to last, so I should just train two at the same time. Guarantee me a staff member.
smart.
Otherwise, you double your time
Yeah.
training two separate ones.
Yeah, that's smart.
Yeah. So, but you know what? In hindsight, it probably didn't work out too well for me. Actually, no, it didn't work out too. Did
It
it?
did the last time with Brian and Megs.
Oh,
They
Brian
started
and
at the
Megs,
same
they're
time.
still there. Yeah, yeah. I'm kidding. Yeah, so that's what I used to do when I used to hire people, is two at a time, just because I thought the odds were not in my favour if
Wow.
you know
That's what I was
they didn't
taught,
start. Yeah.
Interesting. I've actually never heard of that before, but it makes sense.
Mm.
And then one of them was from Recruitment, or both recruiters?
Both recruiters, both
That's
had about
awesome.
4 years experience each.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And is that because of your content on LinkedIn? Like, I don't know, maybe just people don't want to work for us, but no recruiters ever. We've never employed a recruiter. So how did you go
Oh.
attracting them? Oh, Blake has.
Oh, interesting.
Who? No,
Yes.
we've never recruited we've never
experienced
hired an
recruiter.
experienced recruiter.
Why?
They don't want to work for
Look
us.
at us, mate. We've got nothing going on.
We're just a couple of blokes in hoodies. They don't wanna work. No, all of our hires have always been no experience.
I suppose we've never tried. We've always just
Yeah.
put a job ad and yeah, I'm sure how did you do it?
Firstly, I just want to
$10
start by
task?
saying I actually it wasn't $10 task. I think training recruiters that have potential are better quality candidates in my experience. Experienced recruiters are a little bit entitled sometimes. They want these crazy salaries and they're a little bit complacent. In my experience, I actually really like hiring sales people into trainee recruitment roles. They're the
Yeah.
best.
So how come you didn't do that this time?
I didn't do that just because of my time. I needed someone that knew how to qualify and interview candidates, because ultimately that's what they're both doing. So they're two different levels. There's a talent consultant and a talent manager as well. So Clarice, basically get her doing, she's almost, bless her, she's like my EA, my PA, my marketer, my admin, my market mapper. She does so much for me. And then when she's done the masses and she's got the leads, Tom then he will qualify them and he will interview them. I do all the client side and the business development. So all of our roles are siloed.
That's awesome.
I didn't have too much time to teach someone from scratch how to qualify a candidate. 2 days of training and they were already on the phone speaking to candidates and they knew how to do it.
Well
so
done, Jess.
it was very, I purposely wanted that for my first two
And how'd you
hires.
find them? Did you recruit them yourself?
I did.
Headhunted them?
Headhunted both of them, yep.
What is that like? I find it so weird. Like, hey, I'm the director of Blended. Do you want to chat about working for me? Like, I just find it
It's
really
only awkward if you make it awkward, mate. That's
you done it?
awkward. I've done it a few times. It's never worked, but I don't feel like it was awkward.
I do find sometimes actually when I was recruiting and I was sending a lot of in-mails in the first instance, I did find people would be a little afraid to tell me that they weren't interested. Like if I sent them a link, are you interested in this opportunity? I did find people would get awkward because it was like, no, I don't want to work for you.
Yeah.
Whereas in Rectorec, people feel they can be honest. Like, actually, no, that company's not what I'm looking for. But yeah, I did find I got ghosted a lot actually.
Yeah, Amy, for example, she was reaching out to a lot of recruiters, and
Amy's your staff?
Yeah.
Yep.
She was getting a lot of feedback, like positive feedback and interviews and people interested. So maybe it's just the director thing that you're talking about.
Yeah, possibly. It might be a little bit intimidating.
Yeah.
I found in my experience that's what I found. Not intimidating is probably the wrong word, but it's like they feel uncomfortable saying, "I don't like your agency.
Yeah.
I don't want to work for you."
That's why it's so hard to recruit for yourself.
Yeah, because you end up not following the process properly. You know, when you've got a client, you've got like a really strict process that you follow every single time. And when you do that, it works really well. But I find when I recruit for myself, I see the good in people really early on. I'm like, yeah, all right, we'll give it a go. And then it just doesn't always go to
You know
plan.
what? I've got a feeling on this one. there's 3 red flags, but the feeling's good.
No, I know exactly what you mean by that. Actually, do you know what? I found I wanted to figure out if I could work with them. So I was way more chatty than process driven in terms of the questions when I was hiring for myself.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And we're on Sussex Street in Sydney. Your office is a stone throw away, you said?
Yeah, just 5-10 minute walk around the corner.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you work out of, who's your friends that you work with?
So
Halo.
Halo people, yeah.
Halo people, nice. And how many people do they have?
They have in Sydney 5 and a couple in Melbourne and a remote worker in Perth as
So that's
well.
a great office to be a part of. So there's 8 of you all together in Sydney and you all work together?
Yeah, and 5 plus me and Tom. So like 6-7 of us in the office at any one time, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's really good. It's nice to have that atmosphere. I was in my spare room for 2 years and it drove me a bit mental, to be honest. So I needed to be around people, so.
Yeah. What do you think of recruiters that say, I just want to work from home 100% of the time?
I find that really challenging to work with. Number one, my clients can't accommodate that. And number two, like part of the fun of recruitment is we're social people. We want to be out, we want to be about, we want to be meeting people. What about if your client's in the city and you've got the opportunity to grab coffee? Oh no, sorry, I'm at home today. Like I just don't really think that it aligns. I'm all for a hybrid model. I think people should have flexibility, work-life balance, be able to enjoy their time doing other commitments. But I definitely think you need a in-person presence in recruitment. It's motivating. Making a BD call in your bedroom is very different to that buzz in the office, right? When it's, you're all on the phones in the morning, you've got wind, someone's made a placement, someone's ringing the bell, it's very different.
Definitely. And then, speaking about big agency, do you have many clients in big agency or is it predominantly boutiques that you work with?
Yeah, not really big agencies in all honesty. I haven't targeted them. They've got their own internal process. They recruit on the masses, My sweet spot is agencies like boutiques with a couple of staff all the way up to about 50 staff. I've got a few clients that have got maybe up to 100 staff, but yeah, that's kind of sweet spot of having between 20 to 30 staff is probably where most of my clients.
Have you ever had a client not want to pay your fee or dispute your fee?
I haven't, but I get a lot of late payers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but it's just recruitment, isn't
it? Yeah.
I get a lot of late payers, but no, never anybody who's disputed the fee or refused to pay.
Yeah. What about, have you had any disputes in who represents the candidate or anything like that? Like, generally, sometimes, we haven't found it recently, but what happens is, you'll put forward a candidate to a company and then someone in the business will be like, oh, he applied for a job with us 9 months ago. He's not represented by you. And you're like, come on, buddy. That's not how this works. And I'm just trying to think if there's any of that kind of inconsistencies with recruiting for recruiters, because I guess they would just, they know how the game works and there's no bullshit.
Most of the clients I work with, I've got quite a good relationship with. So it's almost as though if I refer them, they'll give me that, even if it was they've interviewed them 12 months ago, which has happened. The other thing is in my terms of business, it basically says in order to work with me, any candidate that I represent to you, you're basically saying by working with me, you've already checked your whole database. Any person who is interested in reapplying hasn't come through you before,
That is a great.
Yeah.
That's
Within 12 months.
Can we snip that up?
yeah. We're gonna put that in.
Yeah, I reckon
That's
we need to put that in our terms.
Yeah, definitely. It just basically says like you have given like full authority for us to go into the market. You don't have anyone in the pipeline. If anybody's in your pipeline, you've tried to contact them first, ultimately is what it says.
And do you explain your terms to every single client? Because that's one thing Andrew Banks said to us. He goes, one of our golden rules at Morgan and Banks was explaining our terms of business. And I thought that was really interesting. Most of the time it's just a document you send over and
I don't know. I think it's a little bit easier for me being a recruiter. They understand terms of business. I think if my client base was not recruiters, they'd probably have a lot more questions. I'll just give the standard. I'll say, this is the guarantee period, this is the payment terms, and this is the fees, ultimately. Yeah.
100%. And then we're going through, like, you know, it's still talking about opportunity costs, but you mentioned in this course that you're able to set everyone up for 8 weeks. They get a 90-day calendar. Like, how do you... Is there some bits of information or wisdom or processes that you could share to a recruiter that wants to get you know, a following like you on LinkedIn, not make recruitment feel such a grind where it's just one-to-one calls all the time? How can they set themselves up for success on LinkedIn and actually get a bit of traction without, you know, making it feel like a second job?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the number one thing that they need to do first is change their mindset. How else could you spend 15 minutes a day reaching thousands of people? It's not the investment of your time. There's going to be a reward. Even if you make one extra placement off the back of that, it's a placement you wouldn't have had. It's all about changing your mindset. But I also think it's about people have this fear, whatever their fears are. I'm embarrassed to post. I don't know what to post. I don't have enough time. All these objections that they may have, they need to get out their own way and realize, look, I just need to post something and solve a problem. And it really is as simple as that. Obviously, there's strategies that go behind that, and there's a lot of different processes you can put in place to elevate that. But it's consistency. It's about solving a problem. It's about being useful. It's about adding value. So my goal when I work with any client is not just, here you go, here's a candidate, I want to make a placement. It's about like adding value, being a full service provider, educating them on the market, giving them a breakdown of what competitors are doing, you know, salary surveys and all of that. If I'm posting that on my LinkedIn, it fast tracks the sales process as well, right? Because instead of just giving that to X amount of clients that I work with, that's going out to potentially thousands of clients that may want to work with me. So recruiters need to just think about that in terms of the bigger picture and how many people they can reach and attract by just showcasing what they already know.
You actually gave me some really good advice. Was it a couple of months ago we were talking on LinkedIn? Yeah. And we're talking about your content, and you said that to try and get as much content out there, you kind of just every time you think of something, you just whack it in notes on your phone, and then at the end of the week, you'll just be like, oh, that's a good idea, and then you just start posting it all. Do you still do that?
Oh, yeah. So I've got a note section on my phone. It's probably got 300 different ideas on it. So I'll get inspiration from podcasts, motivational videos.
What's your favourite podcast?
Confessions of a Recruiter. I'll just get motivation from all around. Sometimes I'll speak to a client or a candidate, and a client will tell me something amazing. I'm like, damn, I need to post about that. It's great. I had a candidate the other day, and he was stressed. I placed him. I did a bit of aftercare, and he said, my desk, I've been here since March, I haven't had any placements yet. He was like, I'm stressed. And I had a conversation with him about how long it actually takes to build a desk. Next day, what my post was setting expectations to recruiters about how long it actually takes to build a desk and what you should expect. So that's where my inspiration comes from. It's almost like solving the problems to everyday questions that I'm asked.
And that would not take up any headspace because of that process.
Brain dump. You can, if you're looking for it and your mind is constantly like alert to that, you'll realize that you could put 10 notes on your phone every single day.
Super easy.
Yeah.
Oh, watch out. Declan's going to start spamming the LinkedIn feed, I reckon. He gets some good ideas. But he does it more instantaneously rather than...
I've got my notes.
It's the polls. It's the debates.
It's the debates.
Yeah.
Everybody loves solving a problem
Yeah.
or contributing to a discussion or something in relation to a poll.
Mate, if you put in the start, this is a cheat note for anyone want to get great results in their poll. You say this is debate in the office or recruiters. Yeah.
Solve a disagreement. And then you have a couple of options and people are like, oh, I'm going to solve this disagreement. That one.
It's the best. It's the best.
Yeah. So when people feel like they're about to solve an issue or solve a problem, contribute to some sort of dispute, they always vote. Hey, the votes
around it.
the votes go up so much harder
Yep.
when you say, solve a dispute right now.
Absolutely.
People get amongst that. That's pretty funny.
But the polls are a great BD tool.
Oh, yeah.
So I did one the other day, and then you've got like this segmented market that you could go after. Do you ever do anything like that?
I do, yeah. So I've done polls before, which would be...
do you want a new job? Yes.
No, 100%. Like I did one not so long ago, which was to do with like commission. Like, do you know how your commission compares to other agencies? So then recruiters are like intrigued, and then in the caption I'd say, I'll send you a message afterwards, and people are like, oh, I want to hear, I want to see if I'm getting ripped off. Or so yeah, I actually get a lot of candidates from those type of polls, or thought-provoking questions where I will say, did you know 3 out of 4 recruiters that we registered don't know how their salary compares in comparison to other agencies? And I'll get a lot of DMs like, give me some information, and I'll get candidates off the back of it. So that's how I do a lot of my work. It's not if you're posting, hey, who wants a job? Click here to read the advert. No one's clicking that.
Yeah.
You've got to think outside the box.
Hot jobs of the week.
Hot jobs, yeah.
What about how can recruiters implement those same strategies for their market though? Because recruiters are just like, they're on LinkedIn 8 hours a day. So it's really easy to get engagement from recruiters. But let's say, for example, someone's recruiting in the mining sector.
Yeah.
And you're whacking up a post around, do you like driving the new John Deere? What kind of equipment do you like driving?
Komatsu excavator.
Yeah. How does a recruiter implement those same strategies in a market that,
They're not actually in.
Yeah.
Well, in a market
Physically.
that like, what kind of polls or content would you be making for like something like in mining, for example? Would you have any suggestions? Just riffing off the top of our heads?
Yeah, no, 100%. I think in any industry, there's a problem to be solved. No industry on earth just runs smoothly and everything is just the way it is. You've got to figure out, what do your clients want from you, what will add value to them, and what will educate them. And then that's what you post about. So mining, I can't really give you any specific examples. I have no idea about the mining industry. But let's just say healthcare, for example. You could post all sorts of things about, nurses, pay rates, shift work, loadings, what hospitals are looking for these kind of staff, the interview process, particularly for nurses, because nurses may be great nurses, but they don't know how to sell themselves. So it could be like, say these 3 things to persuade the interviewer. So there's absolutely a problem to be solved in any market. I actually find LinkedIn posts is great for like the B2B side of things. So actually not so much getting candidates, it's actually great for clients.
Yeah.
So no matter what industry you're on, you're dealing with head of department, you're dealing with directors, business owners, like educate them on something, give them something valuable, and what you'll find is you'll always have something to post, or just motivate them, inspire them.
Yeah.
And so LinkedIn, you got over 15,000 followers. You're posting, sometimes multiple times a day. We checked you out on Instagram. You got 126 followers, and it's on complete private with 20 posts.
Yeah.
So like, is that?
And I think actually at breakfast this morning, Declan goes, friends only, eh? Let's see if we're friends.
Did you follow?
Yeah.
I haven't been.
I'll see if I've been accepted. It hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, we'll see if you guys are friends or not. Surely.
I'll accept you.
So yeah, is that for a reason?
Yeah, so going back to what I mentioned earlier, I used to have like over 30,000 followers, and it was a completely open Instagram, but I got rid of that because the target market, just like the things that I would post, and I feel like I did a bit of a 180 in my life. I was posting all this like e-commerce, clothes, brands, and then I went into recruitment, corporate life, and it wasn't aligning. For a while, I was actually posting like videos and reels in terms of like getting jobs and recruitment, and the engagement went, and I was like, okay, this is just not what's working. I'm going to start again. And then I deactivated that, created my own personal one, focused on building my LinkedIn. So a lot of advice that I was reading is just focus on one platform at once, master that, and then move on to the next, because otherwise you spread yourself too thinly. So I decided to do LinkedIn. I tried YouTube. YouTube's very time consuming. I would still love to get that off the ground, but it's just with everything else, it's not the most important right now. So I thought, well, you know what, I'll focus on LinkedIn, and then in the future, I'll probably build an Instagram. So it's actually been something on my mind, but I don't want to open it and go public and then post once a month, because then that's even more awkward. So I'm kind of just like in that limbo phase at the minute. And because I want to help recruiters with building their personal brand specifically on LinkedIn, posting on Instagram is almost not really relevant for me right now. So it's just there in the background.
Are recruiters going on Instagram
I don't reckon.
to look for jobs or like suss out? Like, I wouldn't imagine. My philosophy with the boys at Recruiter is our Instagram, or the way that Vendito presents themselves on Instagram specifically, or just in general, is usually just targeted at other recruiters to look like a cool place to work.
Okay, yeah.
Because I genuinely I've never had a lead from a client before through our company page.
Yep.
Where a client has gone, oh, that's a really interesting insight from Vendito. I'm going to ask them about getting me a candidate.
Yep.
It's always the individual.
It's always your personal brand.
Yeah. So we've kind of, over the last maybe couple of years, have changed strategies a little bit and gone, all right, anything that comes out of Vendito, it's like fluffy, like, woo, great place to work. We love each other. This is an awesome environment, that kind of thing. So if anyone actually wants to work at Vendito, they check out actually Vendito, and then it, has a little bit of fun and excitement about it.
Yeah.
Rather than focusing on, clients and candidates and all that kind of thing. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, I think you're doing the right thing. If you look at RecEx's brand page, rubbish, absolute rubbish. But I learned very early on, your personal brand gets like 10 times more views, 92% trust of people trust an individual over a company brand. You get so much more reach. The other thing as well is LinkedIn, it favoritisms, is that the word? It favors brands that sponsor and pay. So what you'll notice on company brand pages is like every third one's a sponsored post. So your brand, no matter what your post, it's not really coming up. Your impressions, I dare say, will be very low in comparison to your personal brand. Yep. And for me, I want people to work with me as an individual, not RecEx, and it's just a name, isn't it? I think the world's changing. The influencer-driven market that we're in at the moment, the world's changing. People want to work with individuals. They don't care what the company is. So yeah, in my experience and through all of my research, I think personal brand's absolute crucial.
Couldn't have said it better.
Imagine the success stories once you place these candidates. They start being the first content creators in the company, and then they start bringing in results. That'd be a great segue and the way to elevate yourself for even further in the Rectorec market.
That's my goal. I think I said it again. I just want to be more useful as well. I don't just want to make placements. Like it's very motivating for me to inspire recruiters to be the best recruiters that they can be. So I absolutely love that. Those go-getters, those hustlers that want to do better, they want to set themselves apart. That's what really actually gives me the most reward. So that's how I want to be seen in the market. I don't just want to be seen as a Rectorec. I want to be seen as the person that has the best recruiters, the most motivated recruiters, and I want to actually help them achieve that as well and get to that level.
Because it's such a great industry.
Yeah, it is. I do. I'm very passionate about the recruitment industry.
That's awesome. So what would RecEx become in the future?
Yeah, so I actually would want the team to be quite a lean team. I don't really have any big plans to go crazy with hiring 10, 20, 30 staff. I want everyone to be lean, successful, have our client base that we work with that continuously work with us. So the best thing about Rectorec is we get heaps of jobs from the same clients again and again and again. So I just want to operate in a lean model, generate a decent amount of revenue, continue to grow the business. But my number one is to be known as the best. It's not to have like the most amount of staff. It's to be known as that person that can be trusted in the industry.
Love it.
Awesome, Jess. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
We're really
thank you
grateful
for
for your
having
time.
me. It's been great meeting you both.
Wow, it's been an hour 20.
Is that how long it's been? It's gone so quick.
Yeah. Usually this is how they go really fast. When you're just like chatting off the top of your head, you look at the time and it's already been over an hour. So
Wow.
This has been a really good chat. Really appreciate it. Some awesome insights. And we're really keen to see the personal branding thing that comes out shortly.
Yeah. Are you joining the webinar tomorrow?
What time?
5 till 7.
Oh, we got Ephraim from Collar Group interview.
When?
All right.
What time?
5. We can jump in halfway through.
We can get it up during our podcast.
Oh,
with
yeah,
Ephraim.
we'll do that.
Yeah.
Live
Ephraim, check this
feedback.
out. On the yeah.
He'd be like, you two getting commission?
No, that's awesome.
We now have a sponsor, Meta Brands.
Meta Brands. No, that's awesome. Well, thanks very much.
Thank you so much for
Thanks,
having me.
Jess.
Bye.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks for tuning in to another Confessions of a Recruiter podcast with Blake and Declan. We hope you enjoyed and got a lot of value and insights out of this episode. If you do have any questions or you would like to recommend someone to come on the Confessions podcast, we would love any introductions. And remember the rule of the podcast: like, share, and recommend it to a friend. Until next time.